You think Christmas desserts were always store-bought pies and boxed cake mixes? Think again. The 1960s and 70s filled holiday tables with homemade sweets so spectacular they made guests weep, now fading from memory. Let's dig into 60 Christmas desserts from the 1960s and 70s that have disappeared. Nesselrode pudding brought Russian elegance to American Christmas tables during the Gilded Age. This frozen dessert combined chestnut puree with candied fruits, maraschino cherries, and whipped cream, all enriched with egg custard and a generous pour of maraschino liqueur. The mixture was frozen in decorative molds, then unmolded to reveal elaborate shapes that gleamed on silver platters. Named for a Russian diplomat, the pudding represented cosmopolitan sophistication that wealthy families aspired to display. The chestnut flavor was unlike anything else on the holiday table, earthy and sweet in equal measure. Making it required sourcing chestnuts, candying fruits, and mastering the temperamental frozen custard technique. Families served thin slices, the richness demanding restraint. The pudding disappeared as its ingredients became exotic and its preparation too demanding for modern schedules. Nesselrode pudding was Christmas elegance frozen into unforgettable form. Chess pie was once the steady savior of holiday meals, a dessert every Southern household kept on hand because it never let anyone down. Made from sugar, butter, eggs, and a splash of vinegar or lemon, it baked into a dense golden filling with a soft crackle on top. Families turned to it when times were thin, knowing they could make something sweet from ingredients already in the pantry. Its flavor was warm, rich, and comforting, with a tang that made each bite feel special. For many, chess pie tasted like childhood and crowded dinner tables during cold nights. But as Thanksgiving desserts grew flashier and more elaborate, this simple pie slipped to the background. People chose taller pies, fancier toppings, and long ingredient lists. Yet anyone who has eaten chess pie warm from the oven knows its honesty is what makes it timeless. Butter beans with ham hocks brought Southern comfort to Christmas tables, their creamy texture and smoky depth satisfying appetites like few vegetables could. Dried lima beans were soaked overnight, then simmered for hours with a meaty ham hock until both beans and meat surrendered to tenderness. The cooking liquid reduced into a rich pot liquor that coated every bean with silky, porky goodness. Some cooks added onion, bay leaves, or a pinch of sugar to balance flavors, though purists let the ham and beans speak for themselves. The dish required time more than skill. Long, slow cooking was the only secret. Served in deep bowls with cornbread for soaking up the liquor, butter beans with ham hocks could anchor a meal or accompany the main roast. Grandmothers in the South passed down their timing instincts, knowing exactly when beans reached that perfect creamy yet whole texture. The dish connected Christmas to everyday survival cooking, reminding families that humble ingredients prepared with care could grace any occasion. Fantasy fudge was the miracle recipe that appeared on marshmallow cream jars and made foolproof fudge accessible to every mother. The recipe combined sugar, butter, and evaporated milk with chocolate chips and marshmallow cream, eliminating the tricky temperature monitoring that traditional fudge required. Mothers boiled the sugar mixture for exactly 5 minutes, then stirred in the chips and cream until everything melted into glossy perfection. The result was smoother and creamier than old-fashioned fudge, with a texture that practically melted on the tongue. Children didn't care that this version was easier. They only knew it tasted incredible and appeared every Christmas. Poured into pans and cut into squares, fantasy fudge had the same satisfying density as traditional recipes, but with far less risk of failure. The recipe spread through communities during the 1970s, photocopied and shared between friends. Fantasy fudge democratized candy making, proving that delicious homemade treats didn't require years of practice. Pflaumenkuchen was that German plum cake that appeared during the Christmas season, its buttery base covered with halved plums arranged in neat rows and dusted with cinnamon sugar. The cake was simple but required good technique. A tender yeasted dough pressed into a pan, then covered with ripe purple plums cut side up so their juices soaked into the cake as it baked. The edges of the plums caramelized while the center stayed soft, creating contrast in every bite. German immigrant families made this cake for Sunday coffee hour during the holidays, serving thick slices with whipped cream. The recipe traveled from Bavaria and Saxony to American communities in Wisconsin, Texas, and Pennsylvania. By December, fresh plums were gone, so families used preserved or canned fruit, though purists insisted the cake was best in late summer. Flammkuchen represented the practical German approach to baking, simple ingredients combined with care to create something memorable. Tipsy Parson wobbled onto Christmas tables carrying centuries of English tradition and considerable amounts of sherry. This layered trifle began with sponge cake soaked in sweet sherry until thoroughly saturated, then spread with jam and topped with rich custard and whipped cream. The alcohol permeated everything, making each spoonful warming and slightly intoxicating. Families assembled the dessert in clear glass bowls to display the beautiful layers, each stratum visible and inviting. The name came from the notion that village parsons, known for their love of sherry, might become tipsy from such indulgence. Children received versions made with fruit juice instead, preserving their innocence, while adults enjoyed the spirituous original. Making Tipsy Parson required nothing more than patience and good ingredients, yet the result rivaled elaborate French desserts. The tradition faded as trifles simplified and alcohol content became controversial. Tipsy Parson deserved better than obscurity. Oatmeal raisin bars were the dessert you baked when you needed something that could stretch across a big family gathering and still leave everyone satisfied. They were soft and chewy, filled with oats, cinnamon, brown sugar, and handfuls of raisins that plumped up in the oven. The bars baked into thick, golden squares that smelled like comfort the moment you opened the oven door. Families made them because they were easy, reliable, and far kinder on the budget than pies or cakes that required more ingredients. Children loved them because they felt like getting dessert before dinner even started, and adults appreciated how they stayed fresh for days. These bars were the quiet workhorses of holiday baking, slipped into tins, stacked on plates, and offered to neighbors dropping by unexpectedly. But as holiday desserts grew fancier and more visually impressive, oatmeal raisin bars fell off the menu. They were too simple, too plain, too old-fashioned for the new era of glossy pastries. Still, anyone who bites into one today will taste the tenderness of a dessert that knew exactly what it was supposed to do: feed a crowd with warmth and ease. Three-bean salad appeared at nearly every holiday gathering throughout the 1970s, its colorful layers making it as beautiful as it was economical. Green beans, yellow wax beans, and kidney beans were drained from cans and combined with sliced onions and bell peppers in large glass bowls. A marinade of oil, vinegar, sugar, and spices was poured over everything. Then the salad rested overnight while flavors melded. The result was tangy and crisp, each bean variety offering different texture and color. What made three-bean salad practical was its cost. Canned beans were inexpensive, and the salad stretched to feed crowds without straining budgets. It traveled well, too, making it a potluck favorite that arrived looking good. The dish required no heating and could sit at room temperature through long gatherings. Three-bean salad proved that simple preparations from pantry staples could earn places on festive tables alongside more elaborate offerings. Charlotte Russe in molded glory was the showstopper dessert of Victorian Christmas celebrations. The elaborate creation featured ladyfingers lining a mold filled with Bavarian cream flavored with vanilla and often studded with candied fruit. Once chilled and unmolded, the Charlotte revealed perfect cylindrical beauty, the ladyfingers creating a delicate shell around the creamy interior. Families reserved this for Christmas dinner when company was present and impressions mattered. The preparation required planning and skill. The ladyfingers needed precise trimming, the cream needed perfect texture, and the unmolding demanded steady hands. Some versions added whipped cream rosettes or crystallized violets for additional elegance. The dessert melted slowly at room temperature, encouraging prompt service and appreciative consumption. Charlotte Russe required the kind of leisure and domestic skill that modern households rarely possess. Its disappearance marks the loss of an era when holiday desserts were genuine achievements. Scalloped oysters were a Christmas tradition in coastal communities where briny bivalves signified celebration and abundance. layers of shucked oysters nestled between buttery cracker crumbs in shallow baking dishes, each layer doused with oyster liquor, cream, and butter. Seasonings were simple: salt, pepper, and Worcestershire sauce to enhance oceanic flavor. The casserole baked until tops turned golden while oysters beneath plumped and released juices into the cream. The result was rich and delicate, soft oysters against crunchy cracker layers. For families with New England or Southern roots, this dish carried generations of memory, appearing on holiday tables reliably as the tree itself. Children often developed their taste for oysters through this dish, familiar crackers making unusual protein approachable. The smell alone announced Christmas had arrived. Though fresh oysters remain available, scalloped oysters have largely faded, remembered now mainly by elders who associate the dish with their finest holiday memories. Panoche was the brown sugar fudge that Northeastern families considered essential to Christmas, its maple-like flavor distinguishing it from ordinary chocolate versions. Mothers cooked brown sugar, cream, and butter to soft ball stage, then beat in vanilla and sometimes chopped walnuts until the mixture turned creamy and thick. The brown sugar gave panoche a distinctive caramel undertone that was richer and more complex than white sugar could provide. Poured into pans and cut into squares, the fudge had a lighter color than chocolate but an equally satisfying texture. Children who grew up with panoche often preferred it to chocolate fudge, finding its flavor more interesting and less intense. The candy was particularly popular in areas where maple production made brown sugar flavors familiar and beloved. Panoche recipes were often closely guarded, with each family claiming their version was best. This fudge represented regional candy traditions that mothers preserved through generations of December kitchen work. Coconut bonbons were those snow-white confections appearing in Christmas candy assortments, their creamy centers encased in shredded coconut that made them look like tiny snowballs. The centers were made from sweetened condensed milk mixed with powdered sugar and butter, flavored with vanilla or almond extract, then chilled until firm enough to shape. Each ball was rolled in flaked coconut, sometimes toasted for extra flavor, creating textural contrast between smooth interior and chewy exterior. Some families dipped bonbons in chocolate before the coconut coating, creating striped interiors when sliced. The candy was simple enough for children to help make, their small hands rolling sticky centers while adults managed the coating. Coconut bonbons kept well in refrigerators, making them ideal when candy dishes needed constant refilling. The flavor was pure, sweet comfort. Nothing sophisticated, just honest pleasure of coconut and cream. They've been replaced by commercial coconut candies that lack homemade tenderness. Creamed pearl onions were a labor of love that few modern cooks would undertake, requiring patience to peel dozens of tiny onions before drowning them in velvety white sauce. Cooks blanched the pearl onions briefly, then slipped off papery skins one by one, a task often assigned to older children as their holiday contribution. The peeled onions were simmered in milk until tender, then folded into rich bechamel sauce seasoned with nutmeg and white pepper. The finished dish was creamy and mild, the sweetness of cooked onions mellowing into something almost buttery. Served in china bowls alongside the roast, creamed pearl onions added elegance to tables where everyday meals were simpler. Some families topped theirs with breadcrumbs and broiled them golden, adding textural contrast to the silky interior. The dish spoke of abundance and effort, qualities that defined holiday entertaining in an era when convenience foods were beginning to dominate. Today, the ritual of peeling has disappeared, along with the dish itself. Pumpkin chiffon pie was the lighter, softer cousin of the traditional pumpkin pie, a dessert so airy it felt like eating a sweet autumn cloud. It became popular when cooks wanted something elegant but not too heavy after a long day of holiday eating, and chiffon pies were considered the height of sophistication. Instead of the dense custard people are used to today, pumpkin chiffon pie relied on whipped egg whites folded carefully into a spiced pumpkin mixture, creating a silky filling that floated inside its crust. Families loved it because it felt special, almost fancy, even when the ingredients were simple and inexpensive. Mothers would make it the night before Thanksgiving so it had time to set, and children would sneak into the refrigerator just to poke at the trembling surface. But when canned pumpkin fillings and pre-made pies started taking over in grocery stores, chiffon pies faded fast. The delicate preparation did not fit into a world rushing toward convenience. People forgot the feeling of lifting a slice that barely weighed anything, of tasting pumpkin in a way that felt light instead of heavy. The pie disappeared, replaced by versions that were simpler but far less magical. Still, anyone who ever tasted a homemade pumpkin chiffon pie will tell you that nothing has matched its airy charm since. In a holiday built on tradition, it remains one of the sweetest losses. Boiled custard served warm in cups was Christmas Eve tradition in Southern households, a drinkable dessert that bridged the gap between eggnog and pudding. Rich with eggs, milk, sugar, and vanilla, the custard was cooked slowly over gentle heat until it thickened enough to coat a spoon. Families served it warm from heirloom cups, sometimes with a grating of nutmeg on top. The texture was silky and comforting, substantial enough to satisfy without the heaviness of solid desserts. Making boiled custard required patience and attention. Too much heat would scramble the eggs, ruining hours of work. Grandmothers passed down their techniques through demonstration, teaching daughters to recognize the exact moment the custard reached perfection. Some families added bourbon, transforming it into something approaching liquid luxury. The tradition faded as store-bought eggnog became convenient, and fewer cooks possessed the skill to execute proper custard. Boiled custard was more than dessert, it was ritual. Sugar plums were those mysterious confections immortalized in holiday stories, yet few modern cooks could tell you what they actually were. Real sugar plums were handmade candies consisting of nuts or dried fruit coated in layer after layer of sugar syrup, each coat applied and dried before the next, until the center was encased in a smooth shell. The process took days of patient work, dipping and drying repeatedly, until the sugar plums reached proper size and glossy finish. Inside might be an almond, candied ginger, or a spiced prune, each variety a different flavor surprise. During the Victorian era and into the mid-20th century, confectioners made sugar plums in quantities for Christmas, selling them wrapped in tissue paper. The vision of sugar plums dancing required knowing what they were, jewel-like candies in pink, green, and white that caught light like precious stones. As commercial candy took over, the art of making sugar plums faded, leaving only the name behind. What was once a beloved confection became merely a word. Coconut haystacks were the quick confection that mothers could make even on the busiest December days, requiring nothing more than melted chocolate and shredded coconut. Butterscotch or chocolate chips were melted carefully, then stirred with sweetened coconut until every strand was coated. Dropped by spoonfuls onto waxed paper, the haystacks set into rough mounds that looked exactly like their farmyard namesakes. Children could help make these, stirring the mixture and dropping candies, learning basics without hot sugar dangers. The texture combined the snap of set chocolate with the chew of coconut, each bite delivering both crunch and softness. Some mothers added chopped nuts or used white chocolate, while others stuck with the classic their own mothers had made. Haystacks were democratic candy, easy enough for beginners, yet beloved enough that skilled candy makers included them on holiday plates. They disappeared quickly at gatherings, their simplicity making them more rather than less appealing. Frozen fruit salad was the jewel of holiday buffets, its pastel sweetness providing cool contrast to hot, savory dishes crowding Christmas tables. Cream cheese was whipped with mayonnaise until smooth, then folded together with whipped cream, canned fruit cocktail, maraschino cherries, and miniature marshmallows. Some versions added crushed pineapple or mandarin oranges for extra fruit presence. The mixture was poured into loaf pans and frozen solid, then sliced into pink-tinged rounds that held their shape beautifully on lettuce-lined platters. The texture was unlike anything else on the table. Frozen yet creamy, sweet yet tangy from the cream cheese base. Children adored it, begging for extra slices, while adults appreciated how it could be made weeks in advance. The salad straddled categories, appearing sometimes with sides and sometimes with desserts. Frozen fruit salad represented the 1970s love of make-ahead entertaining, proving that planning could produce something genuinely delightful. Butterscotch pie was the kind of dessert that made people stop mid-conversation when it was carried to the table, its glossy meringue peaks and golden filling catching the light in a way no one could ignore. The magic started on the stovetop, where sugar and butter melted together to create a deep caramel flavor that filled the kitchen with warmth. Once the mixture thickened into a silky custard, it was poured into a flaky crust and crowned with a cloud of meringue. Families loved it because it felt luxurious without being expensive, a dessert that tasted like a special occasion even on ordinary days. During the holidays, butterscotch pie was always one of the first things to disappear, with children fighting over the corner slices where the meringue browned just a little more. But as boxed pudding mixes and frozen pies became household staples, this stovetop masterpiece faded out. No one wanted to stand over a pot stirring carefully, watching for that perfect moment when the custard thickened. The world got busier, and the pie slipped quietly into memory. Yet anyone who tasted it fresh will tell you that nothing made with shortcuts ever came close, a lost masterpiece of sweetness and tradition. Snow pudding with custard sauce brought elegance to Victorian Christmas tables with its cloud-like texture and golden accompaniment. The pudding was made from gelatin, sugar, lemon juice, and stiffly beaten egg whites, creating something ethereal and trembling. It arrived at the table pure white and shimmering, often molded into decorative shapes that showcased the cook's skill. The custard sauce, rich with egg yolks and vanilla, provided warmth and richness against the cold, airy pudding. This combination of textures, soft, cold, light against warm, smooth, rich, made every spoonful a revelation. Families considered it sophisticated enough for company, yet simple enough for Christmas Eve supper. The dessert required careful timing, the gelatin needing to set properly before unmolding. Children adored the wobbling presentation, while adults appreciated the delicate balance of flavors. Snow pudding vanished as instant desserts replaced homemade gelatin creations, taking its quiet elegance with it. Steamed plum pudding was the dramatic finale to Christmas dinner. That dark, dense dome carried flaming to the table with brandy blazing blue around its edges. Making one properly took weeks, starting with dried fruits soaked in brandy until they swelled with boozy sweetness. The batter combined sweet, real beef fat giving the pudding its distinctive richness, with breadcrumbs, flour, eggs, and pounds of currants, raisins, and candied peel. The mixture was packed into ceramic molds and steamed for hours until the kitchen filled with the scent of spices and spirits. Traditional families made their puddings on Stir-Up Sunday, 5 weeks before Christmas, allowing time for flavors to mature. The reheating on Christmas Day required several more hours of steaming before the grand presentation. Hard sauce, butter beaten with powdered sugar and brandy, melted into pools around each slice. The pudding was so rich that small portions satisfied, meaning one could serve the entire family. Pralines were the creamy southern confection that melted on the tongue, their caramelized sugar and toasted pecans creating pure holiday indulgence. Mothers cooked sugar, butter, and cream until the mixture reached soft ball stage, then beat in vanilla and whole pecan halves until the candy turned opaque. Spooned quickly onto waxed paper, each praline spread into a flat disc with pecans arranged across its surface. The texture was what made pralines special. Not quite fudge, not quite caramel, but something uniquely smooth that dissolved into buttery sweetness. Families with southern roots considered pralines essential to Christmas, passing recipes through generations. Children learned to recognize the specific shade of amber that meant the candy was ready, watching mothers work with chemist precision. The smell of cooking pralines filled houses with warmth that captured the entire holiday season. Pralines couldn't be hurried, requiring skill that mothers perfected over years of Christmas candy making. Pumpkin roll with cream cheese filling was the pride of holiday bakers in the 1970s and 1980s, a dessert that quietly proved who had real confidence in the kitchen. It was never something you could rush. You baked the thin pumpkin cake just right, warm enough to roll but cool enough not to tear, then wrapped it in a sugared towel so it held its shape. Families watched mothers and grandmothers handle it like a fragile secret, Knowing a single mistake meant starting over. When the cream cheese filling was spread across the unrolled cake, the whole kitchen filled with vanilla and spice. Rolling it back up brought a moment of suspense before those perfect spirals appeared later on the cutting board. But desserts with shortcuts slowly replaced it, and fewer people wanted to spend an afternoon coaxing a thin sheet of cake into behaving. Still, those who tasted it remember the soft pumpkin sponge, the cool, tangy filling, and the feeling that this dessert was part skill and part celebration. Plum pudding arrived at Christmas tables wreathed in blue flames, brandy burning dramatically as families gathered to witness the spectacle. This dense, dark pudding contained no plums at all. The name referred to raisins, which were once called plums in England. The batter combined sweet breadcrumbs, flour, dried fruits, nuts, and enough brandy to preserve it for months. Families steamed the pudding for hours in cloth-wrapped molds, then aged it like fruitcake for optimal flavor. On Christmas Day, the pudding was reheated, doused with warmed brandy, and set alight before being carried ceremoniously to the table. Hidden inside were silver coins or charms that promised luck to whoever found them in their slice. The tradition required advanced planning and genuine skill, making it impractical for modern, rushed households. Plum pudding represented the pinnacle of Victorian Christmas celebration, a dessert that demanded reverence. Ribbon candy was the crown jewel of every Christmas candy dish. Those impossibly thin strips of sugar pulled and folded into delicate waves that shimmered like stained glass. Making it required heating sugar syrup to precisely 300 degrees, then working quickly on marble slabs as the candy cooled just enough to handle. Skilled candy makers would stretch and fold the hot sugar, creating those signature ripples while incorporating festive colors of red, green, and white. The finished ribbons were fragile and beautiful, breaking with a satisfying snap that released bursts of peppermint or wintergreen. During the 1960s and 70s, specialty candy shops in every small town produced ribbon candy by hand, filling storefronts with dazzling displays. Families purchased pounds of it, arranging delicate pieces in crystal dishes that sat on coffee tables throughout the season. The skill required to make ribbon candy has nearly vanished, and today's mass-produced versions lack the ethereal thinness that made handmade ribbon candy special. Peanut brittle shattered into golden shards that caught kitchen light like edible amber, its sweet, salty crunch echoing through holiday gatherings. Mothers boiled sugar, corn syrup, and water to the hard crack stage, then stirred in raw peanuts that toasted right in the molten candy. Butter and baking soda were added at the last moment, the soda creating tiny air bubbles that gave brittle its characteristic texture. The mixture was poured onto greased baking sheets and stretched thin while still pliable, requiring heat-resistant hands and quick movements. Once cooled, it was broken into irregular pieces ranging from paper-thin edges to thick, nut-studded centers. The combination of caramelized sugar and roasted peanuts created an addictive flavor that children couldn't resist. Tins of homemade peanut brittle were given as gifts to neighbors and teachers, though families kept the biggest pieces for themselves. This candy represented December traditions when mothers spent hours over hot stoves creating treats no store could match. Baked pineapple casserole was the sweet surprise that appeared beside holiday hams, its tropical flavor providing brightness amid heavier winter fare. Canned pineapple chunks were combined with sugar, flour, and sharp cheddar cheese, a combination that sounded strange but tasted magnificent. The mixture was topped with buttery cracker crumbs and baked until bubbling and golden, cheese melting into strings that stretched with each serving. The dish straddled sweet and savory in ways that confused first-time tasters but converted them by second bite. Children loved its candy-like sweetness, while adults appreciated how pineapple's acid cut through rich ham. Some recipes added eggs for custard-like texture, while others kept it chunky. This casserole required minimal preparation but delivered maximum impact, making it a favorite of hostesses managing multiple dishes. Baked pineapple casserole represented the era's willingness to experiment. Proving strange pairings sometimes became beloved traditions. Popcorn balls were those sticky sweet spheres that appeared at Christmas parties and were tucked into stockings, their buttery caramel coating holding popped corn in tight formations. Making them required cooking sugar and butter to the right temperature, then quickly tossing in popcorn and shaping the mixture while still warm enough to mold. The timing was crucial. Too hot and the balls fell apart, too cool and they wouldn't stick. Red and green food coloring turned plain popcorn balls festive, while some added peanuts for variety. Children loved receiving popcorn balls, their impressive size and satisfying sweetness making them special treats. Schools and churches made them for fundraisers, wrapping each in cellophane tied with ribbon. Popcorn balls represented American ingenuity, transforming a simple snack into holiday candy through sugar and skill. Glorified rice transformed leftover grain into a festive dessert salad that children begged for and adults secretly loved just as much. Cold-cooked rice was folded with crushed pineapple, miniature marshmallows, maraschino cherries, and whipped cream until it became unrecognizable from its humble origins. Some versions added chopped nuts or coconut for texture, while others kept the base simple. The dish needed thorough chilling, allowing flavors to meld and rice to soften in the creamy mixture. Served in crystal bowls, glorified rice looked almost bridal, pale and dotted with bright cherry red. The sweetness made it controversial as a side dish, yet families insisted it belonged alongside turkey and gravy. This was thrift elevated to celebration, using rice that might otherwise go to waste. Mothers passed down specific ratios, each family believing their version superior. Glorified rice represented an era when creativity with basics was celebrated, when making something from nothing was its own form of kitchen magic. Prune cake was one of those desserts people loved long before they ever admitted it, a moist, spiced treat that showed up on countless holiday tables thanks to its deep flavor and long shelf life. Grandmothers especially swore by it, calling it their secret weapon because it never dried out and always tasted better the next day. The prunes disappeared into the batter, lending sweetness and moisture without announcing themselves too boldly, and the spices wrapped everything in a warm, comforting aroma. It was a cake that stretched ingredients wisely, perfect for large families and tight budgets. Children would roll their eyes at the thought of prunes, but one bite of that sticky sweet crumb made them believers. It was a dessert born from practicality, the kind of treat that made the most of what people had on hand. But as times changed and holiday desserts became flashier, prune cake was left behind. It did not look glamorous, it did not have fancy toppings, and it did not fit the modern obsession with picture-perfect food. So it vanished, even though anyone who ever loved it can still taste it in their memory, a quiet classic forgotten but never truly gone. Syllabub in stemmed glasses was Christmas elegance whipped into frothy perfection. This ancient English dessert combined cream, sugar, and wine or sherry, beaten until it formed soft peaks that held their shape in delicate glasses. The mixture separated slowly, the creamy foam floating above a pool of flavored liquid that guests sipped after finishing the top. Families served syllabub at the end of Christmas dinner, the light texture providing relief after heavy courses. Making it required vigorous whisking by hand, often delegated to daughters learning domestic arts. The wine needed careful selection. Too sweet and the dessert became cloying, too dry and it lacked charm. Some versions incorporated lemon juice for brightness, cutting through the richness with citrus tang. The dessert looked ethereal in crystal glasses, catching candlelight and trembling with each movement. Syllabub disappeared as electric mixers made whipped cream commonplace and the patience for hand whisking vanished. It was celebration in a glass. Date nut roll was the kind of dessert that made children hover anxiously around the kitchen, waiting for the moment it was sliced. It was not a pie or a cake, but a refrigerator candy, rolled by hand and packed with sweet dates, nuts, and just enough cookie crumbs to hold everything together. Families made it weeks before the holiday, storing it away in wax paper like treasure hidden in the back of the fridge. When you sliced it, the spirals of sticky fruit and crunchy nuts made every piece look like a tiny stained glass window, and the taste was just as memorable. It was sweet without being overwhelming, rich without being heavy, and easy to stretch for a crowd when money was tight. Making it was a labor of love, requiring time and patience that people no longer make space for. As store-bought candy boxes and pre-made sweets filled the shelves, the roll faded away, seen as too old-fashioned or too fiddly for modern kitchens, but back then it symbolized celebration, care, and the quiet excitement of a holiday dessert pulled from a cold shelf on a chilly evening. A little forgotten, maybe, but never undeserving of its place at the table. Hot German potato salad brought old-world tradition to American Christmas tables, its warm, tangy dressing a welcome contrast to cold, mayonnaise-based versions. Cooks sliced boiled potatoes while still warm, knowing they absorbed flavors better than cold ones. Bacon was fried crisp in cast iron, then removed while its fat became the base for a dressing of vinegar, sugar, and mustard. Sliced onions softened in the hot grease before potatoes joined the pan, tumbled gently to coat every piece. The bacon was crumbled back in at the last moment to preserve its crunch. Served warm in crockery bowls, this salad steamed on holiday buffets alongside cold cuts and roasted meats. The sweet-sour balance cut through rich holiday foods perfectly. German immigrant families passed down precise vinegar-to-sugar ratios, each household believing theirs achieved harmony. Children who normally resisted potato salad often loved this version, won over by the bacon and warmth. Hot German potato salad represented heritage on the plate, connecting American celebrations to European roots. English toffee was the shatteringly crisp candy that coated kitchens in butter-scented clouds every time mothers made a batch. Sugar and butter were cooked together until deeply caramelized, then poured thin onto baking sheets and topped with melted chocolate and crushed almonds while still warm. The toffee had to reach exactly the right temperature. Too low and it stayed chewy, too high and it turned bitter. Once cooled, it was broken into irregular shards that ranged from paper-thin edges to thick, nutty centers. The texture was what made English toffee special, shattering between teeth before melting into buttery sweetness on the tongue. Children loved the combination of crispy toffee, smooth chocolate, and crunchy almonds in every bite. These candies were often packaged in decorative tins for gift-giving, their homemade quality impressing recipients who knew how difficult proper toffee could be. English toffee represented the pinnacle of sugar cooking skill in many Christmas candy traditions. Lebkuchen were those soft, spiced German cookies that arrived in decorative tins each Christmas, their tops glazed white and their bottoms covered in edible paper called Oblaten. Unlike hard gingerbread, Lebkuchen were meant to be chewy and moist, dense with honey, almonds, and a complex blend of spices that included cardamom, coriander, and anise. German bakeries had perfected these cookies over centuries, and immigrant families brought recipes to America, where Lebkuchen became Christmas traditions in communities from Wisconsin to Texas. The dough was made weeks in advance, stored in crocks to ripen before being cut and baked. The characteristic glaze was made from powdered sugar and water, painted on while cookies were still warm so it dried to a crackled finish. Families would order tins from German specialty shops or make their own following handwritten recipes. Lebkuchen kept for months when stored properly, improving with age as the spices mellowed into harmony. Let's dig into 30 lost Christmas desserts America completely forgot. Fruitcake with suet was once the undisputed king of Christmas desserts, baked weeks in advance and aged like fine wine in American pantries. The recipe called for beef suet, hard fat from around the kidneys, which gave the cake an incomparably moist texture that butter could not replicate. Dried fruits were soaked in brandy for days before being folded into dense batter, heavy with molasses and spices. The cakes were wrapped in cheesecloth soaked in spirits and stored in cool cellars, developing deeper flavor each week. Families served thin slices alongside coffee after Christmas dinner, the richness demanding moderation. The suet kept the cake fresh for months, practical for households without reliable refrigeration. Children wrinkled their noses at the dense texture, but adults understood this was celebration food meant to last. Today, fruitcake survives mostly as a punchline, but the suet-laden original was magnificent. Orange slice cake was a holiday surprise wrapped inside a dessert, dense and chewy with bursts of candied orange that lit up every bite. People loved making it because it felt playful, different from the usual pies and puddings. The chopped orange candy slices melted slightly in the oven, blending with nuts, coconut, and a rich batter to create a texture unlike anything else on the table. Children always recognized the taste immediately, since those little orange candies were a rare treat any other time of year. Families baked this cake weeks in advance because the flavor deepened as it sat, becoming richer and more complex with every passing day. It was the kind of dessert that made people smile before they even tasted it. But as candy companies changed their recipes and holiday traditions shifted towards simpler desserts, orange slice cake faded away. It was too old-fashioned, too sweet, too heavy for modern tastes, and eventually it disappeared from cookbooks and memories alike. Still, for anyone who grew up eating it, the flavor remains unforgettable. A cheerful dessert from a different time. Corn pudding was Southern hospitality baked into a custard, turning humble canned corn into something rich enough for Christmas tables. Cooks combined creamed corn with eggs, milk, butter, and sugar, sometimes adding flour to help it set. The mixture was poured into buttered dishes and cooked slowly until the top turned golden, while the interior remained soft and spoonable. The texture fell somewhere between cornbread and custard, dense yet creamy, with pops of whole kernels throughout. Some families added diced chilies for savory depth, while purists kept it simple. The dish required careful temperature management, as cooking too fast would curdle the eggs. Grandmothers knew exactly when to pull it from the oven, that moment when the center still jiggled slightly but would firm as it cooled. Corn pudding represented transformation of pantry staples into celebration food, proof that special occasions could be honored without expensive ingredients. Today it appears occasionally at Southern tables but has largely faded. Anise hard candy was the licorice-flavored confection that divided families into passionate lovers and determined avoiders. Mothers boiled sugar to hard crack stage, then added anise oil that filled kitchens with its distinctive medicinal sweet scent. The candy was poured into molds or dropped onto slabs, each piece turning clear and glassy as it cooled. The flavor was intense and unmistakable, that sharp licorice bite that either delighted or repelled tasters. Children who loved anise considered it their special treat, knowing siblings wouldn't steal from their stash. For families with Italian or German heritage, anise candy carried cultural significance connecting Christmas to ancestral traditions. The candies were shaped into stars or drops, surfaces sometimes dusted with powdered sugar. Anise hard candy represented the ethnic diversity of American Christmas traditions preserved through generations. Buttermints were those smooth, creamy candies that melted on the tongue, their pastel colors filling cut glass dishes at every holiday gathering. The recipe combined butter, powdered sugar, and peppermint extract into a dough shaped into small pillows or pressed into molds. Professional versions used fondant, but home cooks adapted with cream cheese for easier handling. The candies needed to set overnight, their texture firming while remaining tender enough to dissolve slowly. Buttermints were considered refined candy, appropriate for wedding receptions and church teas as well as Christmas parties. They kept well in tins for holiday gift-giving. The pastel colors could match any decorating scheme, and creative cooks shaped them into trees, bells, or wreaths. Buttermints represented a gentler era when elegance mattered as much as sweetness. Mincemeat pie with actual meat carried centuries of English tradition into American holiday tables. The filling combined finely chopped beef or venison with suet, apples, raisins, currants, citrus peel, and a heavy pour of brandy or rum. Spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves transformed what sounds strange into something hauntingly delicious. The meat provided richness and body, while the fruit added sweetness and moisture. Families made mincemeat in enormous batches each November, jarring it for use throughout the holiday season. The alcohol preserved the mixture and mellowed the flavors over weeks of aging. Served warm with hard sauce or brandy butter, mincemeat pie was the centerpiece of Christmas Eve suppers across New England and the Mid-Atlantic. Children were given small portions, the boozy richness considered adult fare. modern mincemeat abandoned the meat entirely, leaving behind only a pale imitation of the original. The authentic version was complex, savory sweet, and utterly unforgettable. Grape hull pie was a hidden southern treasure, made from muscadine grapes that grew thick on backyard vines and roadside fences. Families who knew this pie understood the work behind it, separating the tough skins from the pulp, simmering the insides until soft, chopping the hulls, then marrying everything back together with sugar and spice. The result was a filling with a deep purple color and a flavor both tart and sweet, richer than any store-bought fruit could ever give. This pie showed up on Thanksgiving tables in rural communities where ingredients came from the land and every harvest was celebrated. It tasted like home, like the sun-baked vines children grew up running past, like the work of hands that valued nothing more than using what you had. But as people moved away from the countryside and muscadine stopped appearing in local markets, grape hull pie nearly vanished. Few recipes survived, passed down only in small handwritten notes tucked inside old cookbooks. A dessert almost forgotten, but unforgettable to anyone lucky enough to have tasted it. Bread stuffing balls were individual portions of holiday stuffing shaped and baked until crispy outside and tender within, eliminating serving challenges of casserole-style dressing. The stuffing mixture, cubed bread, celery, onions, sage, and broth, was formed into golf ball-sized spheres and arranged on baking sheets. A brush of melted butter before baking ensured golden, crispy exteriors, while interiors stayed moist. Each guest received their own perfect portion. No fighting over corner pieces or soggy centers. Children especially loved the novelty of stuffing they could pick up, and adults appreciated increased ratio of crispy surface to soft interior. Some cooks added sausage or chestnuts, creating richer balls. The individual portions made serving easier, no digging through casserole dishes while juggling plates. Bread stuffing balls represented creative problem-solving in holiday kitchens, taking a traditional dish and reimagining its presentation for practical and delicious results. Almond bark clusters were the simple candy that turned holiday snacking into an event, combining roasted almonds with smooth white or dark chocolate. Mothers melted chocolate carefully, stirred in whole roasted almonds, then dropped spoonfuls onto waxed paper to set. The clusters were irregular and rustic, each one slightly different in size and shape, which was part of their charm. Children loved helping make these, the process simple enough for small hands yet resulting in impressive candy. The combination of crunchy nuts and smooth chocolate created textural contrast that made each bite interesting. Some mothers used white chocolate with dried cranberries for holiday color, others stuck with dark chocolate and sea salt. Almond bark clusters kept well in cool places, perfect for gift tins. This candy proved that sometimes the simplest recipes created the most beloved results. Marzipan fruits were those tiny sculptured candies shaped and painted to look like miniature apples, pears, bananas, and oranges, displayed in boxes or arranged on dessert platters. The marzipan was made from ground almonds and sugar, kneaded until smooth and pliable enough to shape by hand. Food coloring was painted on with tiny brushes, building layers to create realistic shading, red blushing into yellow on apples, green stems on oranges. European confectioners had perfected this art over centuries, and American home cooks attempted simpler versions during the Christmas season. The candies were more decorative than practical, often too beautiful to eat. Children would admire them in candy shop windows, memorizing which fruits they would choose when finally allowed to pick. Marzipan fruits represented the artistic side of holiday baking, where flavor was secondary to appearance and the goal was creating miniature works of edible art. Ribbon candy was the impossibly thin, ruffled confection that looked like frozen silk and required true artistry to create. Molten sugar was pulled and folded repeatedly until it developed a satiny sheen, then stretched into long ribbons and pleated while still pliable. The process required speed and skill. The candy had to be folded before it cooled and cracked. Mothers who mastered ribbon candy were considered artists, their delicate creations displayed proudly on holiday tables. The candy came in multiple colors, often striped, with each hue representing a different flavor from peppermint to cinnamon to wintergreen. Children were warned to handle ribbon candy carefully, its thin edges fragile as glass. Eating it meant carefully breaking off pieces that shattered and dissolved, releasing intense sweetness. Ribbon candy appeared in decorative tins at fancy stores, but homemade versions were fresher and more impressive. This candy represented the highest level of Christmas confectionery skill. Broccoli rice casserole became a 1970s Christmas staple when convenience products merged with home cooking to create something families genuinely craved. Cooks combined cooked rice with chopped broccoli, then folded in cream of mushroom soup and processed cheese spread that melted into golden richness. Some recipes called for sautéed onions and celery, adding layers of flavor beneath the creamy base. The mixture was baked until bubbling around the edges, the top developing golden spots where cheese had caramelized. The texture was comfort itself, creamy rice studded with tender broccoli, every bite coated in savory cheese sauce. Children who refused plain broccoli would eat it gladly when disguised in this casserole, making it a parental victory as much as a side dish. The recipe appeared in community cookbooks across America. Broccoli rice casserole represented an era when processed ingredients were celebrated, when feeding families well meant using every shortcut available. Cranberry pudding with hard sauce was one of those desserts that looked humble on the outside but carried a surprising punch once you cut into it. This steamed pudding was dense, tart, and beautifully old-fashioned, the kind of dish families made before ovens were common in every home. The cranberries gave it a deep ruby color and a sharpness that cut through the heaviness of a Thanksgiving meal, and it always arrived at the table warm enough to fog up the windows. But the real magic came from the hard sauce, a thick mixture of butter, sugar, and a touch of something strong enough to make everyone at the table raise their eyebrows just a bit. When you dolloped it over the pudding, it melted slowly, seeping into every corner and creating a flavor no modern dessert can truly imitate. Families made this because it felt festive, grown up, and cozy all at once, a dessert that lit up the room even without frosting or decorations. Over time, the steaming process fell out of fashion, and people traded long cooking times for convenience. Microwaves replaced kettles, boxed mixes replaced handwritten recipes, and the pudding slipped quietly into obscurity. But the truth is, a dessert like this was never about convenience. It was about gathering in the kitchen, checking the pot, waiting together, and finally sharing something warm and indulgent on a cold holiday night, a forgotten classic, but one with a heart that has never really disappeared. Chess tarts for Christmas multiplied the beloved Southern chess pie into individual portions perfect for holiday gatherings. Each tart shell held the same buttery, custardy filling: eggs, sugar, butter, and a splash of vinegar that gave it distinctive tang. The tops cracked beautifully during baking, creating golden surfaces that shattered with each bite. Families baked dozens for Christmas parties, the small size allowing guests to sample without committing to full slices. The filling was simple but required precise technique to achieve the right texture, neither too runny nor too firm. Some cooks added lemon or chocolate, creating variations that filled platters with visual variety. Children could eat these without the mess of larger desserts, making them practical for holiday chaos. The tarts kept well, actually improving overnight as flavors melded. Chess tarts disappeared as store-bought cookies replaced homemade holiday treats, sacrificing craftsmanship for convenience. Hummingbird cake was once a Thanksgiving showstopper, a towering Southern dessert packed with banana, pineapple, and toasted nuts that made the whole room go quiet with the first slice. It tasted like sunshine and warmth even on the coldest holiday morning. Families made it because it felt generous, full of ingredients you saved for special occasions. The batter was thick and fragrant, spiced just enough to feel festive, and the cream cheese frosting wrapped everything in a soft, tangy sweetness. Every layer tasted like celebration. For years, it stood proudly among pies on Thanksgiving buffets, especially in the Deep South, where hospitality meant feeding people with your best. Over time, though, it slipped into birthday parties and spring gatherings instead, pushed aside by pumpkin pies and chocolate desserts that dominated holiday tables. But those who grew up with hummingbird cake remember the joy of cutting into it, the way the fruit kept it moist for days, and how it felt like the dessert that understood the holiday best, abundant, warm, and made to share. A sweet memory worth keeping alive. Tomato aspic was the elegant mold that separated sophisticated hostesses from casual cooks, its shimmering clarity announcing refinement on any holiday table. Tomato juice was combined with unflavored gelatin, lemon juice, Worcestershire sauce, and careful seasoning, then poured into decorative molds to set. The result was a quivering ruby ring that held its shape when unmolded onto beds of crisp lettuce. Some versions included chopped celery, olives, or shrimp suspended within like jewels in amber. The taste was intensely savory, nothing like sweet fruit gelatins that dominated other parts of the meal. Aspic required confidence, as unmolding could go wrong if the gelatin hadn't set properly. Successful unmolding brought genuine pride, the mold releasing perfectly onto its serving platter with a satisfying wobble. Tomato aspic represented formal entertaining from an earlier era, when certain dishes signaled social knowledge. Its disappearance marked changing tastes that favor simplicity over structured elegance. Marzipan fruits were the artistic candies that transformed almond paste into miniature apples, oranges, bananas, and pears, almost too beautiful to eat. Mothers kneaded almond paste with powdered sugar until smooth, then divided it into portions and tinted each with food coloring. Small pieces were shaped by hand into fruit forms, with toothpicks creating texture and cloves serving as stems. The finished fruits were sometimes brushed with egg white for shine or dusted with colored sugar for sparkle. Children were fascinated by how realistic the tiny fruits looked, lined up on plates like produce from a fairy tale market. Making marzipan required patience and artistic skill, each fruit taking several minutes to shape properly. The flavor was intensely almond, sweet, and slightly chewy with that distinctive paste texture. These candies appeared at fancy holiday parties and were given as special gifts to neighbors and friends. Marzipan fruits showed that candy making could be true artistry. Stollen was that dense, fruit-studded German bread that appeared wrapped in foil on Christmas morning, its butter-rich dough concealing a tunnel of marzipan running through its center. Making authentic Stollen required starting weeks ahead, soaking dried fruits in rum until they plumped with boozy sweetness. The yeast dough was rich with butter and eggs, folded around candied citrus, almonds, and the precious marzipan log before being shaped into its distinctive oval. After baking, the Stollen was brushed with melted butter and buried under drifts of powdered sugar that created its characteristic white appearance. Traditional families made several loaves, wrapping them tightly and allowing them to age for weeks. Each slice revealed the spiral of marzipan surrounded by jeweled fruit, the texture somewhere between bread and cake. German bakeries in cities sold authentic Stollen at premium prices, while home bakers attempted their own versions. The time and technique required kept Stollen rare, a true Christmas luxury. Buckeyes were the peanut butter balls dipped in chocolate to resemble Ohio's state nut, with their signature spot of tan peeking through dark coating. Mothers mixed peanut butter with butter, powdered sugar, and sometimes crispy rice cereal until the mixture was firm enough to roll. Each ball was chilled, then skewered with a toothpick and dipped into melted chocolate, leaving the top exposed. The two-tone appearance made Buckeyes instantly recognizable, their name honoring the Buckeye tree whose nuts they resembled. Children loved the combination of smooth peanut butter filling and crisp chocolate shell, often eating them in 2 bites to appreciate each texture separately. The candies were particularly beloved in Midwestern families, where Buckeye trees grew and state pride ran strong. Making Buckeyes became a family assembly line, with children rolling balls while mothers handled the hot chocolate. These candies proved that regional traditions could spread nationwide when the flavor was this good. Sweet potato soufflé was the showstopper that made guests gasp when it emerged from the oven, puffed high and golden like an edible cloud. Unlike dense casseroles, the soufflé required whipping potatoes with eggs separated carefully, yolks beaten into warm puree, whites whipped stiff and folded in at the last moment. The mixture was seasoned with cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla, sweetened with brown sugar, and sometimes enriched with bourbon. Baked in a straight-sided dish, it would rise dramatically, its top browning while the interior stayed impossibly light. Timing was everything. The soufflé had to travel from oven to table immediately before it could deflate. Children pressed their faces to oven doors, watching the miraculous rise with wonder. The texture was unlike anything else, simultaneously creamy and ethereal, sweet but not cloying. Sweet potato soufflé represented kitchen ambition, a willingness to attempt something difficult for the reward of witnessing that collective intake of breath around the table. Shoofly pie was a slice of Appalachian history wrapped in a layer of sticky molasses and crumb topping, a dessert born from frugality and resourcefulness. It was called shoofly because the sweet smell drew flies toward the table and cooks had to shoo them away as the pie cooled. Families made it because molasses was cheaper and easier to store than sugar, making it the perfect holiday ingredient for households that had more hard work than money. The pie baked into a deep, gooey layer at the bottom with a crumbly cake-like topping on top, creating a texture that felt both rustic and indulgent. Children loved it because it was sweet enough to feel forbidden, and adults enjoyed it because every bite tasted like the land they came from. Over time, as refined sugar became cheap and store-bought pies took over, shoofly pie disappeared from most homes. It was too regional, too old-fashioned, too simple to compete with newer holiday desserts, but the people who remember it still talk about it with a quiet pride. It was a dessert that told a story, and every slice tasted a little like history. Suet pudding with hard sauce was Christmas comfort food for families who valued richness over refinement. The pudding itself was simple: flour, suet, sugar, and spices steamed until dense and satisfying. What elevated it was the hard sauce, a mixture of butter, powdered sugar, and brandy beaten until fluffy and pale. The cold sauce melted slowly over warm pudding, creating rivers of boozy sweetness that soaked into every bite. Families served this after heavy Christmas dinners when something substantial was needed to conclude the feast. The suet gave the pudding a texture impossible to achieve with butter, tender yet sturdy enough to hold together. Children received smaller portions with less sauce, the brandy content making it adult territory. Making hard sauce required patience and strong arms, the butter needing thorough beating to achieve proper consistency. This dessert disappeared as sweet became difficult to source and modern tastes shifted toward lighter fare. Watergate salad appeared on holiday tables throughout the 1970s, its pale green color and mysterious origins making it a conversation piece at every gathering. Named after the scandal, though no one knew why, this dish combined instant pistachio pudding with crushed pineapple, miniature marshmallows, chopped pecans, and whipped topping folded into fluffy sweetness. Preparation took minutes, making it a favorite of busy hostesses needing impressive results without labor. The pistachio pudding gave it that distinctive mint green hue that looked festive against red tablecloths. Children adored its candy-like sweetness and surprise of crunchy nuts amid the creamy base. The dish straddled the line between salad and dessert, often appearing alongside savory dishes, though it could have ended any meal. Watergate salad represented the era's embrace of convenience products transformed into something special. Today, it survives mainly in church cookbooks and memories of those who grew up spooning seconds onto full plates. Saltwater taffy was the pull-and-stretch candy that turned December kitchens into family workshops, children and parents working together until arms ached. Mothers would cook sugar, corn syrup, butter, and salt to the hard ball stage, adding food coloring and flavoring before pouring the hot mixture onto greased marble slabs or baking sheets. Once cool enough to handle, the taffy was gathered into ropes and pulled repeatedly, the stretching incorporating air that transformed the candy from dense and dark to light and glossy. Children took turns pulling, their small hands working alongside their mothers until the taffy turned satiny and began to hold its shape. Cut into bite-sized pieces and wrapped in waxed paper, each taffy was chewy, sweet, and impossibly fresh compared to anything from the store. The flavors ranged from peppermint to vanilla to fruit, each batch a different color. Making taffy was as much entertainment as production, a family activity that created memories alongside candy. Anise cookies were those licorice-scented treats that divided holiday gatherings into lovers and haters. Their distinctive flavor and acquired taste that generations of European-American families cherished. The dough was simple: butter, sugar, eggs, flour, but the anise seeds or extract transformed it into something polarizing and memorable. Italian families made anisette cookies glazed with white icing, while German households preferred their anise cookies crisp and plain. The aroma of baking anise cookies was unmistakable, filling homes with a scent that signaled Christmas as surely as pine trees. Children often rejected them initially, then grew to crave them as adults when the flavor meant memory and tradition. The cookies kept for weeks in tins, their anise flavor intensifying rather than fading. Bakers made enormous batches, knowing anise cookies were meant for the entire season rather than immediate consumption. Though supermarket cookies have pushed homemade versions aside, dedicated families still carry on the tradition. Hard candy drops were the jewel-toned confections that mothers poured into molds or dropped onto marble slabs, each piece catching light like stained glass. Sugar, corn syrup, and water were boiled to the hard crack stage, then quickly mixed with food coloring and flavoring before being poured into shapes. The process required speed and precision. Hard candy set within minutes and couldn't be reworked once it cooled. Lemon drops glowed yellow, cinnamon discs burned red, and mint rounds sparkled green, creating a rainbow on every candy dish. Children loved sucking on these candies, feeling them slowly dissolve and release intense bursts of flavor. Some mothers used antique molds passed down through generations, pressing candy into shapes of Christmas trees, bells, and stars. The candies kept for weeks in tins, making them perfect for gift-giving and stocking stuffers. Hard candy drops required mastering high-temperature sugar work, a skill that separated casual candy makers from serious Christmas confectioners. Creamed celery was the sophisticated cousin of other creamed vegetables, turning the overlooked stalk into something worthy of fine china and silver spoons. Cooks sliced celery on the diagonal and simmered it until tender, then folded it into rich white sauce enriched with cream and butter. Seasonings were delicate: white pepper, a touch of nutmeg, perhaps parsley for color. The celery retained gentle crunch even in the sauce, providing textural interest other creamed vegetables lacked. This was a dish for formal dinners and holiday gatherings, its mild elegance complementing rather than competing with richer offerings. Pale green and white colors added sophistication to tables heavy with browns. Some cooks topped creamed celery with toasted almonds, creating a gratin that bordered on indulgent. The dish required fresh celery at its crispest, making winter holidays the perfect occasion. Creamed celery has virtually disappeared from modern menus, a casualty of changing tastes that forgot how refined simple vegetables could become. Mincemeat pie was once the crown jewel of Thanksgiving, the kind of dessert that could stop you in your tracks because the house filled with the smell of spice, fruit, and something warm that felt older than memory. People forget that mincemeat was not just a pie. It was a ritual built slowly with dried apples, raisins, sweet cloves, and whatever a family saved for the holiday. It was about turning humble ingredients into something that tasted like celebration even when times were thin. Grandmothers made it by instinct, each slice slightly different depending on the year's harvest. Kids wrinkled their noses at the idea of sweat, but one bite of that sticky, rich filling turned anyone into a believer. It demanded patience and trust in the old ways, which is why it faded once canned fillings and pre-made pies appeared. The world sped up, and mincemeat pie did not fit into a life lived in a hurry. Today, most people have never tasted it at all, but anyone who makes it from scratch understands why older generations fought to keep the recipe alive. Dense, spiced, comforting, and bold, it held on to tradition even as the world changed. Coconut custard pie was the quiet heartbeat of Southern holiday tables, a dessert that won people over without needing decoration or fuss. It came from the simplest ingredients: eggs, milk, sugar, shredded coconut, and vanilla. As it baked, The custard settled low while the coconut rose and turned golden, creating a pie that tasted warm and familiar. Families loved it because it brought sunshine to a cold season and reminded them of childhood afternoons. It showed up at potlucks and Thanksgiving dinners long before more elaborate desserts became popular. Older cooks trusted it because it never failed, even in lean years. But as store-bought pies and trendier flavors crowded the table, this humble favorite faded. People forgot how satisfying a soft custard and toasted coconut could be. Still, in homes where old recipes survive, this pie remains a gentle reminder of slower holidays and simple comfort. Divinity was that cloud-like confection appearing on Christmas cookie trays throughout the South and Midwest, a fluffy white candy that seemed to melt on the tongue before you could taste it. Making Divinity required perfect timing and dry weather. Humidity could turn a batch into sticky failure. Grandmothers would boil sugar syrup while beating egg whites to stiff peaks, then slowly pour the hot syrup into the whites while continuing to beat until the mixture held its shape. The candy was dropped by spoonfuls onto waxed paper, each piece a little cloud dotted with chopped pecans. Some families added peppermint extract for Christmas, tinting batches pale pink or green. The process demanded patience that couldn't be rushed, often taking 30 minutes of continuous beating. Children would hover nearby, waiting to lick the beaters clean. Divinity was fragile and didn't travel well, making it a true homemade treasure. The candy represented the time and care that went into Christmas preparations. Candied orange peel transformed citrus scraps into jewel-like confections that looked almost too pretty to eat but tasted too good to resist. Mothers sliced orange peels into strips, boiled them repeatedly to remove bitterness, then simmered them in sugar syrup until translucent. Drained and tossed in granulated sugar, the peels sparkled like amber gems, their texture chewy and intensely flavored. Some mothers dipped theirs in dark chocolate, the bitter cocoa complementing sweet citrus perfectly. The candy took days to make properly, requiring multiple blanching sessions, but results were unlike anything from stores. Children were often surprised by how much they loved candied peel, expecting bitterness and finding instead concentrated orange sunshine. Arranged on plates alongside other candies, the peels added color and sophistication that elevated the entire spread. This was the candy that showed a mother's dedication, her willingness to transform what others discarded into something beautiful. Harvard Beets brought deep crimson elegance to holiday tables, their sweet and sour glaze glistening like rubies under dining room lights. The dish took its name from the university whose color it matched, though the connection ended there. Cooks sliced cooked beets into rounds, then simmered them in sauce of sugar, cornstarch, vinegar, and butter until the glaze thickened and coated each piece. The result was simultaneously sweet and tangy, earthiness balanced by bright acidity. Some recipes called for orange zest or cloves, adding complexity to the straightforward preparation. The vibrant color made Harvard Beets a visual dream, adding drama to tables dominated by browns and beiges. Children often resisted at first, but the sweet glaze converted many skeptics. This was practical cooking too, as canned beets worked perfectly fine when fresh ones were unavailable during winter. Harvard Beets represented an era when vegetables were dressed up for company, transformed from everyday nutrition into worthy holiday companions. Bourbon balls always sat quietly in a tin tucked toward the back of the holiday table, waiting for the adults to give each other a knowing smile before lifting the lid. These were not for children. They were made from crushed cookies, powdered sugar, cocoa, chopped nuts, and just enough bourbon to warm the throat without overpowering the sweetness. Families loved them because they required no baking at all, just rolling, chilling, and hiding from curious hands. At Thanksgiving gatherings, they were shared like a secret, passed from adults to adults, each one a small burst of chocolate and holiday spirit. But as tastes changed and more homes embraced alcohol-free celebrations, bourbon balls drifted into the background. Some still make them at Christmas, but few remember they once appeared proudly at Thanksgiving too. Those who do recall the laughter, the soft clink of tins closing, and the rich flavor that signaled the start of the season. A tiny dessert with a big personality. Pickled peaches were jeweled accompaniments that appeared beside Christmas hams, their spiced sweetness providing perfect counterpoint to rich meats. Canned peach halves were simmered in syrup infused with whole cloves, cinnamon sticks, and apple cider vinegar until they absorbed warm spices completely. The peaches emerged tender and glossy, their golden flesh tinged with amber from the spiced brine. Packed into jars, they could be preserved for months, ready to grace holiday tables whenever needed. Each peach half was studded with whole cloves, making them look almost decorative, edible ornaments for the dinner plate. The flavor was complex, simultaneously sweet, tart, and warmly spiced in ways that elevated simple sliced ham. Grandmothers often made these in late summer when fresh peaches were cheap, though canned versions worked nearly as well. Pickled peaches represented the tradition of putting up preserves, ensuring summer's sweetness could brighten even the darkest winter meals. Pecan turtles were the candy that looked like their namesake, with pecan legs extending from caramel bodies topped with chocolate shells. Mothers arranged pecans in clusters on waxed paper, then spooned warm caramel over the centers, letting it flow between the nuts. Once the caramel set, each cluster was dipped in or drizzled with melted chocolate, creating the turtle's shell pattern. The combination of textures made turtles irresistible: crunchy pecans, chewy caramel, and smooth chocolate in every bite. Children loved helping arrange the pecan clusters, feeling like they were creating little candy creatures. The turtles required multiple steps and careful timing, as the caramel needed to be cool enough to hold shape, but warm enough to stick to the nuts. These candies were often saved for gift boxes and special occasions, their elaborate appearance making them feel more valuable than simpler confections. Pecan turtles proved that homemade candy could rival anything from expensive chocolate shops. Snowball cookies were those tender, crumbly confections rolled in powdered sugar until they looked like tiny snowdrifts, their buttery interiors hiding chopped pecans or walnuts. Known by many names, Russian tea cakes, Mexican wedding cookies, butterballs, they appeared on every Christmas cookie tray. The dough was simple: butter, powdered sugar, flour, and nuts, mixed until combined and shaped into small balls. After baking, cookies were rolled in powdered sugar while warm, then rolled again after cooling for a thick coating. The texture was unique, sandy and tender, dissolving on the tongue while leaving buttery sweetness and nutty crunch. Every family had their version, some adding vanilla, others almond extract. Snowball cookies represented Christmas baking at its most approachable: simple ingredients, forgiving technique, and delightful results. Mincemeat pie was the quintessential Victorian Christmas dessert that lingered on American tables well into the 1970s, its filling a mysterious mixture of dried fruits, spices, suet, and sometimes actual meat. Traditional recipes called for beef or venison mixed with apples, raisins, currants, and candied peel, all preserved in brandy for months. The preparation began in autumn, allowing flavors to marry before the holidays. Grandmothers packed the mixture into crocks, topping up with more brandy as weeks passed. The filling was spooned into pastry shells and baked until the crust turned golden and filling bubbled through decorative slits. Each slice revealed dark, jeweled fruit suspended in rich, boozy syrup. Children often rejected mincemeat pie as too strange, while adults savored its complex flavors that spoke of centuries-old traditions. By the 1980s, most families had abandoned the authentic version for jarred substitutes, losing the depth that only months of aging could provide. Spiced crab apples were the garnish that elevated holiday platters from ordinary to elegant, their deep ruby color and clove-studded skins announcing celebration. Whole crab apples were simmered in sweetened vinegar syrup infused with cinnamon sticks, cloves, and allspice until they turned translucent and tender. The fruits were packed into jars with their spiced liquid and stored for weeks, improving as flavors concentrated. Come Christmas, they were arranged around roasts and hams like edible jewels, their glossy skins catching candlelight beautifully. The taste was intensely sweet-tart, with warming spice notes that complemented rich meats. Some families made their own from backyard trees, while others relied on store-bought versions. Children often avoided them, but adults treasured spiced crab apples as essential holiday tradition. The jars themselves became gifts wrapped in ribbon for neighbors. Spiced crab apples represented the artistry of preservation, autumn's harvest transformed into winter's ornament. Bread pudding with raisins was once the unspoken hero of large family Thanksgivings, a dessert that existed because nothing in the home was ever wasted. Leftover rolls and biscuits were torn into pieces, soaked in warm milk, eggs, sugar, and spice, then baked until the top turned crisp and the center stayed soft. Raisins popped up between the folds like tiny surprises, sweetening each bite. It was a dessert that fed many without demanding much, a comfort dish that tasted like warmth and familiarity. Families served it straight from the oven, spooning big helpings into bowls and letting the heat melt whatever topping was added: cream, ice cream, or nothing at all. Over time, fancier desserts edged it out, and bread pudding became something people associated with diners, not holidays. But for big families, this dish was once the difference between just enough and everyone gets seconds, and its memory still feels like home. Chocolate fudge was the rich, dense square that anchored every Christmas candy plate, its glossy surface promising sweetness that delivered completely. Mothers combined sugar, cocoa, butter, and milk in heavy saucepans, stirring constantly while the mixture bubbled to the soft ball stage. The critical moment came after removing from heat, beating until it lost its shine and began to set required arm strength and patience. Poured into buttered pans and scored while warm, the fudge cooled into perfect squares that were dense, smooth, and intensely chocolatey. Some mothers added walnuts or pecans, while purists kept it plain to showcase the cocoa flavor. The texture separated homemade from store-bought, tender enough to bite through easily, yet firm enough to hold its shape. Children would sneak pieces before it fully set, knowing the slightly soft centers were the best part. Chocolate fudge represented the foundation of holiday candy making, the recipe every mother mastered before attempting anything more complicated. Hard sauce was the essential accompaniment to steamed puddings, a simple mixture of butter, powdered sugar, and brandy beaten until light and fluffy, then chilled until firm. The name was misleading. Hard sauce wasn't a sauce at all, but a flavored butter that melted into silky pools when spooned onto warm pudding. Making it required beating butter until nearly white, gradually incorporating sugar and spirits until the mixture could be piped into decorative shapes. Some families added nutmeg or vanilla, others used rum or whiskey instead of brandy, each household developing their signature version. The sauce was made ahead and refrigerated, sometimes for weeks, allowing flavors to meld. At the Christmas table, hard sauce was presented in a pretty dish with its own small spoon, passed around for each guest. Children often found the brandy too strong, but adults savored how cold butter melted against hot pudding. Without hard sauce, steamed pudding was incomplete. Yet today, few cooks know this classic even exists. Mothers beat egg whites until stiff, then slowly poured in boiling sugar syrup while the mixer ran at high speed, whipping air into the mixture until it turned glossy and held its shape. The process required perfect timing and dry weather. Humidity was divinity's enemy, turning fluffy into sticky disaster. Chopped pecans or walnuts were folded in at the last moment, adding crunch to each pillowy bite. Dropped by spoonfuls onto waxed paper, the candy set into irregular peaks that looked like tiny meringue mountains. Children would hover nearby, waiting for permission to lick the beaters clean. The texture was unlike anything store-bought, light enough to dissolve on the tongue, yet substantial enough to satisfy. Divinity couldn't be rushed or faked, making it a labor of love that mothers undertook specifically because their children begged for it year after year. Congealed cranberry salad was the jewel-toned centerpiece of holiday tables, a shimmering mold that turned canned cranberries into something worthy of celebration. Homemakers dissolved cherry gelatin in boiling water, then folded in whole cranberry sauce with chopped celery, walnuts, and crushed pineapple for texture. The mixture was poured into decorative ring molds, then chilled overnight until firm enough to unmold onto crisp lettuce leaves. The result was stunning, deep ruby red with visible chunks of fruit and nuts suspended throughout like edible stained glass. Children watched in amazement as the wobbly creation held its shape on serving platters. The tartness of cranberries balanced the sweetness of gelatin, while celery provided unexpected crunch. This dish required planning and patience, qualities that defined holiday cooking before instant everything arrived. Today, it has largely vanished from Christmas spreads, replaced by simpler preparations that lack the artistry of waiting for that perfect gelatin set. Apple pandowdy was the rustic cousin of all the fancier apple desserts, a dish that did not care about looks or presentation and still managed to win every heart at the table. It began with sliced apples simmered with cinnamon, butter, and a touch of brown sugar until the whole house smelled like the inside of an orchard. Instead of laying a perfect crust over the top, cooks would break pieces of dough and scatter them unevenly, letting the edges sink into the bubbling fruit as it baked. The juices caramelized around the dough, turning each little piece into something crisp, chewy, and irresistible. This was a dessert for families who valued flavor over perfection, people who understood that the best dishes are sometimes the messiest. Children loved it because it felt fun, like a dessert that broke the rules, and adults loved it because it tasted like the orchard harvest served straight from the pan. But as crisps and cobblers became more popular and easier to sell in bakeries, the pandowdy quietly slipped away. Its uneven top was not camera-ready, and its old-fashioned name did not help it survive in a modern world. Still, anyone who ever ate it fresh from the oven remembers the way it tasted like fall itself, a forgotten treasure hiding in plain sight. Fruit and nut balls were those dense confections rolled in coconut or powdered sugar that appeared on every church cookie exchange plate during the holidays. The mixture combined ground-dried fruits, dates, figs, raisins, with chopped nuts and sometimes graham cracker crumbs, bound together with honey or corn syrup. No baking was required, making them perfect for busy December schedules when oven space was precious. The balls were rolled by hand, each one slightly different, then coated in coconut, powdered sugar, or finely chopped nuts. The flavor was intensely fruity and sweet, concentrated enough that one or two satisfied. Children could help make them, their small hands perfect for rolling the sticky mixture into uniform spheres. Fruit and nut balls kept for weeks in tins, their flavors melding and improving over time. They represented the practical approach to holiday candy, wholesome ingredients, no special equipment, and results that looked impressive despite their simplicity. Rum balls were the adult-friendly treat that children begged to taste despite, or perhaps because of, being told they couldn't. Mothers would crush vanilla wafers into fine crumbs, then mix them with cocoa powder, powdered sugar, corn syrup, chopped pecans, and enough rum to bind everything together. The mixture was rolled into small balls, then coated in more powdered sugar, cocoa, or finely chopped nuts. No baking was required, making rum balls perfect for busy December days when ovens were already occupied. The flavor was sophisticated, the rum mellowing as the balls aged and integrating with chocolate and nuts into something complex. Some mothers made batches with less rum specifically for children, though kids always wanted the real thing. Stored in tins, rum balls improved over several days, the flavors deepening and the texture becoming more tender. They were passed at adult gatherings and tucked into gift boxes for teachers and neighbors, a candy that bridged the gap between cookie and confection. Molasses cookies used to fill holiday tins long before chocolate chip cookies took over the world. Soft, spiced, and deeply fragrant, they were made with molasses, ginger, cinnamon, and cloves. Flavors that tasted like winter settling in. Children dipped them in milk. Adults paired them with coffee, and everyone appreciated how long they stayed fresh. These cookies were practical, affordable, and comforting in a way that no modern packaged dessert quite captures. They appeared at bake sales, church socials, and Thanksgiving dinners as symbols of warmth and tradition. But when chocolate became the star of American desserts and holiday baking turned toward richer treats, molasses cookies faded quietly from the spotlight. Still, their flavor is unmatched. Simple, homey, and gently sweet. A cookie that tastes like memory. Duchess potatoes transformed humble mashed potatoes into piped rosettes, worthy of any French restaurant, their golden peaks adding architectural drama to holiday platters. Potatoes were boiled, mashed with butter and egg yolks, then seasoned carefully before being loaded into pastry bags with star tips. The mixture was piped onto baking sheets in decorative swirls, then baked until peaks turned golden while centers stayed creamy. The technique required practice. The mixture needed the right consistency to pipe smoothly without being too soft to hold shape. Hostesses who mastered Duchess potatoes earned reputations as accomplished cooks. The presentation elevated what might otherwise be another bowl of mashed potatoes into something guests photographed before eating. Children were often assigned counting duties, ensuring each guest received their share. Duchess potatoes proved that technique could transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, requiring only skill rather than expensive ingredients. Chocolate truffles were the sophisticated confection that mothers rolled by hand, each ganache center coated in cocoa or nuts. Heavy cream was heated and poured over chopped chocolate, then stirred until smooth and chilled until firm enough to scoop. Small portions were rolled quickly between palms, the warmth of hands softening the ganache, then immediately coated in cocoa powder, chopped nuts, or more melted chocolate. The texture was what made truffles special, that moment when the coating gave way to silky, intensely chocolatey centers. Children considered truffles grown-up candy, something to be savored rather than grabbed by the handful. Mothers who made truffles often experimented with flavors, adding orange zest, coffee, or liqueurs to the ganache. The candies looked professional but required no special equipment, just quality chocolate and patience. Truffles represented European sophistication brought into American kitchens, proving that elegant confections could be homemade. Kolache were those Czech pastries that appeared in bakeries and home kitchens during the Christmas season. Their soft, yeasted dough holding pools of fruit filling or sweetened farmer cheese. The dough was rich with butter and eggs, rolled into small rounds and pressed in the center to create wells for the filling. Traditional fillings included prune, poppy seed, apricot, and a sweetened cheese mixture that was almost like cheesecake. Czech immigrant communities in Texas and Nebraska made kolache for every holiday, but Christmas brought the most elaborate versions. The pastries were arranged on platters, their colorful fillings creating a mosaic effect that made tables look festive. Making kolache required patience. The dough needed proper rising, the fillings careful preparation. Each family had their signature recipes, guarded and passed down through generations. The pastries were meant for sharing, brought to church gatherings and neighborhood parties. Caramels were the buttery squares that stuck to teeth in the most satisfying way, each piece a study in perfectly cooked sugar and cream. Mothers would combine sugar, corn syrup, butter, and cream in heavy pots, stirring constantly as the mixture darkened from pale gold to rich amber. The temperature had to reach exactly the firm ball stage. Too soft, and the caramels wouldn't hold their shape. Too hard, and they'd crack teeth. Poured into buttered pans and cooled, the caramel was cut into squares and wrapped individually in waxed paper twisted at both ends. The texture was dense yet yielding, requiring serious chewing that released waves of buttery, slightly burnt sugar flavor. Some mothers added vanilla, others a pinch of sea salt before salted caramel became trendy. Children would unwrap piece after piece, the waxy paper accumulating in pockets and between couch cushions. Homemade caramels represented patience and precision, candies that couldn't be rushed but rewarded every minute of careful attention. Carrot copper pennies were a make-ahead marvel that freed Christmas cooks from last-minute vegetable preparation. Carrots were sliced into thin coins, blanched until tender, then marinated for days in a tangy sauce of tomato soup, oil, vinegar, and Worcestershire sauce. The coins absorbed the bright orange-red marinade until they glistened like polished copper. Green bell pepper rings and sliced onions joined the carrots, adding color contrast and crunch. What made copper pennies invaluable was their timing. They actually improved with age, developing deeper flavor after 3 or 4 days in the refrigerator. Busy hostesses could prepare them the weekend before Christmas, freeing precious hours on the holiday itself. Served cold straight from the jar, they required no reheating or fussing. The dish appeared at church potlucks and family gatherings throughout the season. Carrot copper pennies proved that practical cooking could also be delicious, a lesson in efficiency that modern meal preppers have rediscovered. Apple dumplings were once the grand finale of Thanksgiving, a dessert that made people gasp when it landed on the table. Whole apples were peeled, filled with cinnamon sugar and butter, wrapped in pastry, and baked until the crust glistened with syrup and the apples softened into tender perfection. When you cut into one, steam rose in fragrant clouds, carrying the smell of spice across the room. These dumplings felt like a celebration of the harvest itself, each one a reminder of the orchards and autumn days that shaped the season. But they required time: peeling, stuffing, wrapping, tending to the syrup. Modern holidays moved faster, and pies became easier to assemble and serve. Slowly, apple dumplings lost their place, remembered only by families who still valued slow cooking and dramatic desserts. Yet even today, one bite of a warm dumpling is enough to understand why they once stole the entire show. A dessert meant to be savored. Date nut roll was that glossy cylinder wrapped in waxed paper appearing in refrigerators during December, a dense and chewy confection tasting like concentrated Christmas. The candy started with chopped dates cooked with sugar until thick, then mixed with butter, rice cereal, and mountains of chopped walnuts or pecans. While still warm, the mixture was shaped into logs, rolled in powdered sugar or coconut, then wrapped tightly and chilled until firm enough to slice into neat rounds. Each slice revealed a mosaic of nuts and golden dates, the texture somewhere between fudge and taffy. Department stores like Neiman Marcus became famous for holiday date nut rolls, but most families had cherished recipes passed down through generations. The rolls kept well for weeks, making them practical gifts prepared ahead of the holiday rush. Children often found them too sophisticated, leaving more for adults who savored their complex sweetness. Date nut rolls represented a time when Christmas candy meant more than chocolate. Peppermint bark layered dark and white chocolate with crushed candy canes into a festive treat that looked as beautiful as it tasted. Mothers would melt semi-sweet chocolate and spread it thin on waxed paper, letting it set until firm before adding a layer of white chocolate on top. While the white chocolate was still soft, crushed peppermint candy canes were pressed into the surface, their red and white stripes creating holiday color against the creamy background. Once fully hardened, the bark was broken into irregular shards that showed off the distinct layers. Each bite delivered the snap of tempered chocolate followed by cool peppermint that lingered on the tongue. Children loved the contrast of textures and flavors, the way the candy cane pieces crunched against smooth chocolate. Making bark required patience for proper tempering, but rewarded cooks with a candy that looked professional and tasted even better. It became a staple of cookie exchanges and holiday gift boxes, a treat that said Christmas without any words needed. Candied carrots with brown sugar transformed an ordinary root vegetable into a glazed masterpiece that glistened under dining room chandeliers. Cooks sliced carrots into coins, then simmered them in butter and brown sugar until natural sugars caramelized into a sticky coating. Some recipes called for orange juice to brighten the sweetness, while others added cinnamon for warmth. The carrots emerged tender but not mushy, each piece wrapped in glossy amber glaze that caught candlelight beautifully. This dish bridged the gap between vegetable and dessert, making it popular with children who otherwise avoided anything orange on their plates. Grandmothers passed down specific butter-to-sugar ratios, guarding proportions like family secrets. The carrots were economical. A single bag could feed a dozen guests when properly prepared. Though they required constant attention to prevent burning, the reward was a side dish that disappeared faster than mashed potatoes. Candied carrots represented holiday indulgence applied to humble ingredients. Gingerbread with lemon sauce was the kind of Thanksgiving dessert that wrapped the room in warmth before the first bite was even taken. The gingerbread came out of the oven dark and fragrant, soft enough to spring back when touched, but sturdy enough to hold a drizzle of the glossy lemon sauce that bubbled on the stove. The sauce itself was tart, bright, and smooth, poured over each slice while still hot, so the edges soaked up the sweetness. Families loved the contrast: spice and citrus, heat and cool air drifting through a busy kitchen. It tasted like an older style of holiday, one built on simple ingredients and real time spent at the stove. As boxed mixes and canned toppings took over, fewer people bothered whisking a sauce by hand or baking gingerbread from scratch. But anyone who remembers this dessert can still recall the smell of spice rising with the steam and the way that golden sauce made a humble cake feel like something extraordinary. Orange fluff was the cloud-like confection that children circled back to throughout holiday meals, its sherbet orange color standing out among earth-toned dishes. Orange gelatin was dissolved and mixed with cottage cheese, whipped topping, mandarin orange segments, and miniature marshmallows until impossibly light and airy. The cottage cheese provided protein and subtle tang that balanced sweetness, while marshmallows added pockets of chewy texture. Chilled until set, but still soft, orange fluff was served in glass bowls where its sunset color glowed invitingly. Some versions added crushed pineapple or chopped pecans, but purists kept the base simple. The dish required no cooking and could be assembled days ahead, perfect for busy holiday schedules. Children often asked for orange fluff specifically, knowing it would appear at Thanksgiving and Christmas without fail. Orange fluff represented the era's love of convenience desserts dressed up as salads, occupying that sweet spot between side dish and treat. Old-fashioned molasses taffy was the dark, chewy candy that tasted like Christmas past, its deep sweetness connecting children to generations before. Mothers cooked molasses with sugar, butter, and vinegar until it reached the firm ball stage, the mixture darkening as it bubbled. Once cool enough to handle, the taffy was pulled repeatedly until it lightened in color and developed that characteristic chewy texture. The flavor was robust and complex, molasses providing depth that corn syrup couldn't match. Children earned their candy by helping pull, their arms growing tired as the taffy slowly transformed. Cut into pieces and wrapped in waxed paper, molasses taffy kept its chew for weeks. For families with rural roots, this recalled childhoods when molasses was sweetener of choice. Molasses taffy wasn't as popular as lighter versions, but nothing matched its rich old-time flavor. Charlotte Russe was that elegant molded dessert appearing at fancy Christmas parties, a tower of Bavarian cream surrounded by ladyfingers and crowned with whipped cream rosettes. The preparation required making custard from scratch, folding in whipped cream and gelatin, then carefully lining a mold with ladyfingers before filling it with the cream mixture. The dessert had to chill for hours until set, then came the nerve-wracking moment of unmolding, a successful release revealing a perfect striped tower, while failure meant a collapsed mess. Bakeries in cities sold individual charlottes in paper cups, but the homemade version was the showpiece of Christmas buffets during the 1960s. Hostesses would dust the top with powdered sugar to look like snow or pipe elaborate whipped cream decorations in red and green. Charlotte Russe required skills home cooks once practiced regularly, making proper custard, whipping cream by hand, and working with gelatin. As these techniques faded from common knowledge, so did this graceful dessert. Peanut butter fudge was the creamy cousin to chocolate that children with nut cravings begged for every December. Mothers combined sugar, milk, and butter, cooking the mixture to softball stage before removing from heat and beating in generous scoops of peanut butter. The result was smoother than chocolate fudge, with a melt-in-your-mouth quality that made it dangerously easy to eat too much. Poured into buttered pans and cut into squares, the fudge had a pale tan color that looked almost like caramel but tasted purely of roasted peanuts. Some mothers swirled chocolate through the top, creating marbled patterns that made each piece unique. Children who preferred peanut butter to chocolate considered this their special candy, the one made just for them. The texture was softer than its chocolate counterpart, practically dissolving on the tongue without requiring much chewing. Peanut butter fudge represented the variations mothers created to ensure every child had a favorite on the Christmas candy plate. Stuffed celery was the appetizer that kept hands busy and conversation flowing while holiday dinners finished cooking in crowded kitchens. Celery stalks were cut into uniform lengths, their natural curves creating perfect boats for various fillings. Cream cheese mixed with blue cheese crumbles was one popular option, while pimento cheese offered southern flair. Some hostesses piped the filling in decorative ridges, while others simply spread it before arranging stalks on trays. The preparation was simple enough for children to help, making it a task assigned to young hands eager to contribute. Guests would gather in living rooms, reaching for celery sticks between sips of punch. The cool crunch of celery against creamy filling provided textural pleasure that elaborate appetizers couldn't match. Stuffed celery represented the transition from everyday snack to party food. Nothing more than celery dressed up for company. Its disappearance from modern tables seems strange given its simplicity and timeless appeal. Pineapple upside-down cake was once a mid-century marvel, the kind of dessert families made to feel modern and bright in the years after the 1940s. Its glossy pineapple rings, maraschino cherries, and caramelized brown sugar topping made it look like a celebration all by itself. At Thanksgiving, it cut through the heaviness of the meal with its sunny sweetness and soft crumb. Families loved it because it was beautiful without effort and impressive without complicated steps. But as tastes changed and holiday flavors leaned more heavily toward pumpkin and spice, this cheerful cake drifted out of the November rotation. It still appears at summer cookouts and potlucks, but rarely at Thanksgiving, where tradition now leans in other directions. Yet one forkful of warm pineapple upside-down cake can still brighten a winter evening, reminding everyone why it once held such pride of place. A dessert that brought a bit of light to the coldest season. Bourbon balls were the adult confection found on every Southern cookie tray, those no-bake treats that packed a spirited punch beneath their chocolate coating. The recipe was elegantly simple: crushed vanilla wafers mixed with cocoa, powdered sugar, corn syrup, and generous amounts of Kentucky bourbon, then rolled into balls and coated in powdered sugar or chocolate. No cooking was required, making them perfect for busy holiday schedules, though they needed days of aging for flavors to meld. The bourbon mellowed as the balls rested, transforming from harsh to smooth while permeating every bite with warm, oaky sweetness. Ladies made batches in their kitchens, storing them in tins between layers of waxed paper. The treats were not for children, though teenagers sometimes snuck them from platters. Bourbon balls represented a genteel form of indulgence, strong enough to notice but respectable enough for church socials. They've never entirely disappeared but are rarely made with the same generous pour. Spiced pecans were the candied nuts that disappeared from bowls faster than mothers could refill them, their cinnamon sugar coating proving utterly irresistible. Egg whites were whisked with sugar, cinnamon, and salt, then tossed with pecan halves until every nut was coated. Spread on baking sheets and roasted until crisp and fragrant, the pecans emerged caramelized and delightfully crunchy. The spice blend varied by family. Some added nutmeg or allspice, others used cayenne for heat. Children would sneak handfuls, knowing holiday bowls of spiced pecans wouldn't last long. The nuts bridged the gap between candy and snack, appearing at parties where guests stood chatting. Making spiced pecans required no temperature monitoring or special skills, far simpler than most candies. Spiced pecans proved that nuts could be just as sweet and special as chocolate. Sweet potato custard was the quiet soul of Thanksgiving long before sweet potato pie stole the spotlight, a silky baked dish that tasted like home even in uncertain years. Families loved it because it was simple and comforting, made with sweet potatoes, milk, spices, and a steady hand. It came from an older style of cooking that relied on patience rather than tools. When it came from the oven, lightly set and fragrant, its sweetness came from the vegetable itself instead of handfuls of sugar. Adults swore it softened even the hardest winners, but as shortcuts and store-bought pies took over, the custard was pushed aside as too plain or old-fashioned. People forgot that its simplicity was exactly its charm. No crust, no excess, just a warm, velvety dessert that felt like a hug on a cold evening. Today it appears mostly in memories and fading recipe cards, but reviving it once is enough to understand why it mattered. Panoche was that creamy brown sugar fudge that appeared on holiday candy plates, its caramel-like flavor setting it apart from ordinary chocolate versions. The name came from a Mexican-Spanish word for raw sugar, and the candy had roots in both Latin American and New England traditions. Making panouche required cooking brown sugar with cream or milk to the soft ball stage, then beating the mixture until it lost its gloss and thickened enough to pour into pans. The result was smooth and creamy with a deep butterscotch flavor that lingered on the tongue. Chopped walnuts or pecans were often folded in, their crunch contrasting with the silky candy. Panouche was considered more sophisticated than chocolate fudge, appearing at ladies' luncheons and holiday open houses. The technique was tricky. Undercook it and the candy never set, overcook it and the texture turned grainy. Home candy makers took pride in achieving perfect panouche, its golden color and complex sweetness proof of their skill. Lady Baltimore cake towered over Southern Christmas tables in layers of white perfection filled with fruits and nuts. This elegant creation featured white cake layers filled with a mixture of raisins, figs, pecans, and sometimes candied cherries, all bound with fluffy white frosting. The cake originated in Charleston and spread throughout the South as the pinnacle of holiday baking. Each layer required careful handling, the delicate crumb demanding gentle assembly. The filling combined textures, chewy dried fruit, crunchy nuts, smooth frosting, into something complex and satisfying. Families reserved Lady Baltimore for Christmas Day dinner when its impressive height could be properly appreciated. Making the frosting required cooking sugar syrup to precise temperature before beating it into egg whites until glossy. The cake improved overnight as flavors melded and moisture distributed evenly. Lady Baltimore represented the apex of Southern hospitality, a dessert that announced celebration through both beauty and taste. Plum pudding was a true Old World holdover, a dessert that lingered on some tables long after most American families moved on. Dense, dark, and deeply spiced, it was made from dried fruits soaked for days, steamed slowly, and served with a sauce rich enough to make the long wait worthwhile. To many families in the 1960s and 1970s, plum pudding tasted like heritage, a link to ancestors who carried their traditions across oceans. It was not a quick dessert, nor an easy one, and that was part of its charm. Holidays were slower then, and a dessert that took hours to steam felt like a fitting reward at the end of a long day. But modern kitchens lost the tools, time, and patience for steaming puddings, and the dessert quietly disappeared. Those who remember it recall the warm spice, the dense texture, and the sense of continuity it brought to the table. A reminder that holidays once held space for recipes older than memory. Date nut roll was the old-fashioned candy that combined chewy dates with crunchy walnuts in a log that sliced into pinwheel rounds. Mothers cooked sugar, milk, and butter to soft ball stage, then stirred in chopped dates that softened in the hot mixture. Walnuts were added along with vanilla before the candy was turned onto a damp towel and rolled into a log shape. Once cooled, the roll was sliced to reveal spirals of date-studded candy, each piece chewy, nutty, and intensely sweet. The candy had old-fashioned appeal connecting Christmas to earlier generations, a recipe grandmothers passed down with pride. Children sometimes needed convincing to try it, but once they did, the unusual texture and flavor won converts. The candy kept well wrapped in waxed paper, ideal for holiday gifts. Date nut roll proved that Christmas candy didn't need chocolate to be beloved. Tutti Frutti candy was that rainbow-colored confection made by preserving fruits in brandy throughout the year. Each season's harvest added to a crock that became Christmas treasure. The process began in spring with strawberries, continued through summer with cherries and peaches, and finished in fall with pears and grapes, each addition accompanied by sugar and spirits. The crock sat in a cool place, occasionally stirred, the fruit slowly breaking down into jeweled conserve tasting of concentrated summer. At Christmas, the Tutti Frutti was spooned over ice cream, pound cake, or eaten straight as a boozy treat for adults. Some families kept their crocks going for years, the flavor deepening with each passing season. The tradition required forethought that modern cooks rarely possess, remembering to add each fruit at its peak, maintaining proper ratios. Tutti Frutti represented the old way of cooking when preparing for Christmas began in spring, and patience was an essential ingredient. Blancmange molded in copper forms graced Victorian Christmas tables with its pristine beauty. This milk pudding, thickened with cornstarch or Irish moss and flavored with almond extract, emerged from molds in elaborate shapes that showcased the cook's artistry. The texture was silky smooth, trembling gently when carried to the table on silver platters. Families served it with fruit sauces, raspberry, strawberry, or preserved cherries, that provided color contrast and flavor counterpoint. Making proper blancmange required attention to temperature and timing, the mixture needing precise cooking to set without becoming rubbery. Some cooks added ground almonds for authenticity. Others relied on extract alone for convenience. Children loved its mild sweetness and wobbly presentation, while adults appreciated its refined simplicity. The copper molds themselves were prized possessions, passed through generations and displayed in kitchen hutches. Blancmange faded as instant puddings promised convenience, sacrificing elegance for caramel pecan cake was once a classic centerpiece dessert, the kind made when someone really wanted to show off their best baking skills. The cake layers were soft and buttery, but the true magic was the caramel glaze made on the stovetop. It bubbled slowly until thick and glossy, then was poured over the cake while still hot, carrying chopped pecans across the top like little jewels. The glaze hardened just slightly as it cooled, turning each slice into a perfect balance of crunch and softness. Holiday tables welcomed it proudly, before store-bought caramel toppings and boxed cakes pushed it aside. People used to gather around the kitchen to watch the caramel come together, knowing it could burn in a heartbeat if you turned away. That kind of dessert required attention, care, and a quiet hour at the stove, things fewer homes had time for. But those who remember it can still hear that soft caramel drip down the sides and feel the warmth of a cake made with genuine effort. Martha Washington Candy was the chocolate-covered confection filled with sweetened coconut and condensed milk that children found irresistible. Mothers mixed shredded coconut with sweetened condensed milk, butter, and powdered sugar, then chilled the mixture until firm enough to roll into balls. Each ball was dipped in melted chocolate and set on waxed paper to harden, creating smooth, dark shells around creamy white centers. The texture contrast was immediate, chocolate snapping to reveal soft, intensely sweet coconut filling. Named for the First Lady, these candies carried a sense of American tradition and patriotic pride. Children loved helping roll the coconut mixture, their small hands creating balls of varying sizes that mothers then perfected. The candies kept well in cool places, making them ideal for gift boxes and holiday cookie plates. Martha Washington Candy was often a mother's secret weapon, simple enough for beginners but impressive enough to earn compliments from experienced bakers. Pfeffernüsse were those small, round German spice cookies appearing in tins throughout December, their name meaning pepper nuts despite containing no actual nuts. The dough was dense with honey, molasses, and a complex blend of spices including white pepper, anise, cardamom, and cloves that gave them their distinctive bite. Baked until firm, the cookies were rolled in powdered sugar while still warm, creating a crackled coating that contrasted with the dark spiced interior. Unlike soft American cookies, Pfeffernüsse were meant to be hard. Almost too hard when fresh, they softened over days as the spices mellowed. German and Dutch immigrant families brought these recipes to America, where they became traditions in communities from Pennsylvania to the Midwest. The cookies kept for weeks in tins, improving with age as flavors married. Children often found them strange at first, but grew to crave them as adults. Making Pfeffernüsse meant connecting to old world traditions, honoring ancestors who carried recipes across oceans. Meringue-topped banana pudding was the special occasion version of a Southern staple, saved for holidays when families wanted something a little grander. The pudding itself was the familiar mixture of bananas, vanilla wafers, and creamy custard, but the meringue transformed it. Beaten until glossy and piled high, it baked into delicate peaks that turned golden under the oven's heat. When brought to the table, it looked almost too pretty to touch, a cloud of sweetness covering a dessert everyone already loved. For decades, this version appeared at Thanksgiving gatherings, offering a soft and comforting sweetness after heavy meals. But as whipped topping replaced homemade meringue and instant pudding became the norm, this beautiful holiday version slipped away. It required patience, a steady hand, and the confidence not to over-whip the egg whites, skills many home cooks stopped practicing. Still, for those who grew up with it, one look at those browned peaks can bring back a whole lifetime of holidays. Butterscotch Drops were the amber-colored candies that delivered rich, buttery sweetness in every slow-dissolving piece. Mothers cooked brown sugar, butter, and corn syrup together until the mixture reached hard crack stage, the butter creating a richness that plain sugar candy couldn't match. Dropped by spoonfuls onto greased baking sheets, each candy spread into a flat disc with slightly ruffled edges. The color ranged from pale gold to deep amber, depending on how long the sugar cooked, with darker candies carrying slightly caramelized, almost burnt notes. Children loved the way butterscotch melted slowly in their mouths, releasing waves of buttery flavor that seemed to last forever. Some mothers added a splash of vanilla or a pinch of salt to enhance the butterscotch taste. These candies were perfect for tucking into pockets and lunchboxes, hard enough to survive without melting or crumbling. Butterscotch Drops represented simple candy making at its finest, requiring only basic ingredients and careful temperature control. Which vanished Christmas dessert would you bring back to your holiday table? Share your sweetest memory in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe so we can keep rescuing forgotten treats before they're gone forever.